Most men don't fall apart all at once. They erode quietly, slowly, sentence by sentence, thought by thought, until one morning they look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. But here is what nobody tells you: the same way words broke you down, words can build you back up. 7 sentences, said daily, said with conviction. That's where the rebuilding begins. Good evening. Settle in. What I'm about to share with you is not new, but it may be exactly what you've been waiting to hear. There is a man, and perhaps you know him well, who has been through something. Maybe it was a failure so complete it shook the very foundation of who he thought he was. Maybe it was a relationship that ended, a business that collapsed, a dream that quietly died without ceremony. Maybe it was simply the long, grinding accumulation of disappointments that wore him down to almost nothing. This man still gets up in the morning. He still goes through the motions. But inside, in that private, honest place where a man truly lives, something is broken. I want to speak directly to that man tonight, because here is what I have come to know after years of studying human behavior and the extraordinary capacity of the human mind. A man is not finished when he is defeated. He is only finished when he quits talking to himself like a man worth saving. That is the central truth of everything I am about to tell you. You see, most people misunderstand how a man falls apart. They think it happens because of circumstances, because of what the world did to him. And yes, the world can deal harsh blows. I won't pretend otherwise. But the real erosion, the deep, dangerous kind, happens in the language a man uses inside his own mind. I'm not good enough. I always fail. Things never work out for me. I don't deserve better. These are not just feelings. These are sentences. And sentences repeated long enough become beliefs. And beliefs become the invisible architecture of a man's entire life. So if sentences built the prison, then sentences hold the key to the door. This is not wishful thinking. This is not positive thinking nonsense wrapped in a bow. This is how the human mind actually works. The great psychologist William James understood it. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius lived it in the middle of war and empire. And ordinary men just like the one I described a moment ago, have used this principle to walk out of the darkest chapters of their lives and into something extraordinary. Now, I want to give you 7 sentences. Not suggestions, not affirmations to be mumbled half-heartedly into a bathroom mirror. These are declarations of war against the old story. Said every morning, with your feet on the floor and your eyes open, they will begin slowly, quietly, and powerfully to change the man you see in that mirror. Here they are. Sentence 1. I am not who I was. I am becoming who I was meant to be. This is the sentence of permission. So many men remain imprisoned in a past version of themselves, not because they have to, but because no one ever told them they were allowed to change. This sentence grants that permission. Say it like you mean it, because you do. Sentence 2. My pain has purpose, and I refuse to let it go to waste. A broken man who wastes his suffering becomes bitter. A broken man who mines his suffering for meaning becomes formidable. Every wound you carry contains information. Every failure taught you something the comfortable man will never know. Honor that. Don't run from it. Convert it. Sentence 3. I am disciplined, and I show up even when I don't feel like it. Feelings are unreliable foremen. If you wait to feel ready, feel motivated, feel inspired, you will wait for a train that rarely comes. Discipline is the decision to act in alignment with your values, regardless of your emotional weather. Say this sentence until your body believes it before your mind does. Sentence 4. I am worthy of the life I am working toward. This is perhaps the most quietly devastating absence in a broken man's inner vocabulary, the simple belief that he deserves good things, not because the world owes him anything, but because he is a human being of value, and value deserves to be developed, not buried. Say this sentence especially on the days it feels like a lie. Those are the days it matters most. Sentence 5. I choose my response. No person, no circumstance controls my mind. Viktor Frankl discovered this truth in conditions so extreme I will not insult them by comparison tonight. But the principle he uncovered in that darkness belongs to every man. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies your freedom. This sentence is the daily reclamation of that freedom. Claim it. Sentence 6. I am building something, one day, one decision, one right action at a time. Broken men often feel as though they are standing in rubble with no blueprint. This sentence provides the blueprint. It reminds you that you do not need to see the entire staircase. You need only take the next step, and then the next. Momentum is not given. It is built, and it is built exactly this way, one deliberate action, compounded daily over time. Sentence 7. I will not quit on myself. The world may not see it yet, but I am on my way. Save this one for last. Say it slowly. This is your covenant with yourself, the handshake between the man you are today and the man you are committed to becoming. No applause required. No validation from the outside world necessary. Just you, your word, and the quiet, unshakable decision to keep going. Now here is the central truth I want you to carry with you long after this broadcast ends. The man who controls his inner conversation controls his destiny. Change what you say to yourself in the dark, and watch what changes in the light. That is not poetry. That is mechanics. The mind moves in the direction of its most dominant thought. Feed it these 7 sentences faithfully, daily, without exception, and you are not being naive. You are being precise. You are engineering a new outcome from the inside out. This is how it has always worked. Not in grand gestures, not in one dramatic moment of transformation, but in the quiet discipline of a man who decides, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, with no audience and no fanfare, that he is done settling for less than what he is capable of. That man is you, if you choose it. I want you to think about something for a moment. Think about a man, a capable man, an intelligent man who sits down each morning with every intention of changing his life. He has the books. He has the plan. He has, perhaps, a list of goals written on a piece of paper tucked somewhere in his desk drawer. And yet, day after day, something stops him. Not a person, not a circumstance, something quieter than that. Something he cannot quite put his finger on. He takes 2 steps forward and finds himself, almost mysteriously, pulled 3 steps back. He starts the new habit and abandons it by Thursday. He makes the call and then talks himself out of the next one. And he begins to wonder, genuinely wonder, whether something is simply wrong with him. Whether he is, at his core, one of those men the world was not designed for. I have studied this pattern for a long time, and I can tell you with absolute certainty there is nothing wrong with that man. But there is something missing. And what is missing is not effort. It is not intelligence. It is not even opportunity. What is missing is the right identity. You see, here is what most people never stop to consider. Every action a human being takes flows downstream from something. Before the behavior, there is a belief. Before the decision, there is a self-concept. Before the result, there is an internal picture, a quiet, deeply held answer to the question, who am I? And here is why this matters so profoundly. Your mind is not designed to help you succeed. It is designed to keep you consistent. It is designed to make sure that what you do on the outside matches what you believe on the inside. So when a man believes, deep down, that he is someone who struggles, someone who doesn't quite finish things, someone who has never really had things work out, his mind will work tirelessly and brilliantly to prove that belief correct, not out of cruelty, out of loyalty. It is simply doing its job. This means that no amount of strategy, no amount of discipline, no amount of motivational fuel will produce lasting change in a man's life until the identity underneath those actions changes first. The action must have somewhere solid to stand, and here is where everything opens up, because identity is not fixed. It was never fixed. The beliefs you carry about yourself today were installed gradually, through experience, through repetition, through the words other people spoke over you, and the words you eventually began speaking over yourself. And what was installed gradually can be gradually replaced. This is not a small thing. This is everything. When a man begins to see himself differently, truly differently, at the level of quiet daily conviction, his behavior follows. Not perfectly, not immediately, but inevitably. The outside world always catches up to the inside one. That is where your work begins. Not in your calendar, not in your habits, in your answer to the most important question any man will ever ask himself. Who do I believe I am? Answer that honestly. Then answer it better, and watch what happens next. I want you to consider something that may be the most unsettling thing you hear all week. Not because it is dark, but because once you truly understand it, you cannot unfold it. You cannot go back to not knowing. Here it is. Right now, at this very moment, your mind is being shaped, not by some dramatic event, not by a crisis or a revelation or a turning point. It is being shaped by the most ordinary, unremarkable thing imaginable. The sentences running quietly through your head, the ones you barely notice. The ones you have repeated so many times they feel less like thoughts and more like weather, just the climate of being you. And for a great many men, that climate is doing quiet, invisible damage every single day. The man who wakes up and thinks, without even realizing he is thinking it, "Here we go again," is not simply having a bad morning. He is making a deposit. He is adding one more layer to a structure that has been under construction for years. A structure built entirely out of repetition. And the tragedy is not that the structure exists. The tragedy is that he built it without ever choosing to be the architect. Now, stay with me here, because this is where it turns. The human mind does not naturally distinguish between what is true and what is repeatedly told to it. This is not a flaw. It is, in fact, one of the mind's most extraordinary features, its ability to accept, internalize, and eventually act upon whatever it is consistently given. Scientists have observed it. Philosophers have written about it for centuries. And every man who has ever deliberately transformed his life has discovered it firsthand. The mind believes what it rehearses, not what it hears once, not what it reads in a moment of inspiration on a Sunday afternoon. What it rehearses, what it returns to again and again, until that thought stops feeling like a thought and starts feeling like a fact. This is precisely why two men can live through the same hardship and arrive in entirely different places 5 years later. It is not luck. It is not talent. It is the private conversation each man had with himself every morning in between. One man rehearsed his victimhood until it became his identity. The other rehearsed his potential until it became his reality. Same circumstances. Different internal architects. And this brings us to something genuinely freeing. Because if you are the one doing the repeating, and you are, whether you realized it until now or not, then you are also the one who can change what gets repeated. Starting tomorrow, starting tonight, starting the very next moment your mind reaches for its old, tired script. You hand it a better one. This is not about pretending. It is not about forcing enthusiasm you do not feel. It is about understanding the mechanism and using it consciously rather than carelessly. It is about becoming, at last, a deliberate man, one who chooses what gets rehearsed in the private theater of his own mind. Do that consistently, and the belief will follow. The behavior will follow, and eventually, quietly, powerfully, without fanfare, the life will follow too. Repetition built the old story. Repetition will build the new one. The only question is which story you are willing to rehearse starting today. There is a particular kind of stillness that settles over a man when he has been down long enough. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that makes the simplest decisions feel enormous and the most ordinary mornings feel like something to survive rather than something to live. And in that stillness, a thought begins to form slowly, almost imperceptibly, that perhaps this is simply how things are now, that perhaps the version of life he once imagined for himself was never truly meant for him. That thought is the most dangerous thing he will ever believe, not because it announces itself loudly. It never does. It arrives quietly, wearing the costume of realism. It calls itself honesty. It disguises itself as maturity, as a man finally accepting his limitations, finally coming to terms with the way things are. And because it sounds reasonable, because it feels like something a grounded man would think, he lets it stay. He gives it a chair. And before long, that thought has moved in completely. And the man stops trying. I want you to hold on right there. Because before you accept that conclusion, before you hand that thought the deed to your future, I need you to understand something about the nature of brokenness that most people have never been taught. Brokenness is a condition. It is not a character trait. It is not a life sentence. It is not evidence of what you are made of or a preview of where you are headed. It is a moment, an extended, painful, disorienting moment, but a moment nonetheless. And moments by their very nature pass. Consider the bone. When a bone is broken and properly reset, it does not simply return to what it was. It heals denser, stronger at the fracture point than it was before the break. The body, in its extraordinary wisdom, sends its best resources directly to the place of damage. It does not abandon the wound. It rebuilds around it, and what emerges is more resilient than what existed before the injury. The human spirit operates on precisely the same principle. The men throughout history who went on to build remarkable lives, who contributed something lasting to the world around them, were not men who avoided breaking. They were men who broke, stayed broken long enough to be honest about it, and then made the deliberate, unglamorous decision to begin again. not with perfect conditions, not with all their confidence restored, not with any guarantee of outcome, simply with the decision that today they would take one step that yesterday they did not take. That is all rebuilding ever is. One step, then another after that. The destination is not the point in the beginning. The direction is the point. A man who is broken and moving is already a fundamentally different man than one who is broken and still. Movement restores something in the human spirit that stillness cannot reach. It restores the sense, quiet at first, then growing, that he is not subject to his circumstances, that he is, in fact, larger than them. You are not built for permanent defeat. Nothing in your design suggests it. The very fact that something in you resists the idea, that something in you pushed back just now, even slightly, is evidence enough. Brokenness is where some stories end. It is also where the best ones begin. You are not finished. You are in the middle. And the middle, no matter how dark it looks right now, is never the last page. Get up. Take the step. Write the next sentence yourself. There is something happening inside every man at every waking moment that he almost never thinks to examine. Something so constant, so seamlessly woven into the fabric of his daily experience, that it has become essentially invisible to him. And yet this invisible thing, this quiet, ceaseless process running beneath every decision he makes, every action he takes, every result he produces, is quite possibly the single most powerful force operating in his life. It is the current direction of his dominant thought. And for a man who has been through difficulty, a man who has accumulated losses, absorbed disappointments, and carried the weight of things that did not work out, that current is very often running in exactly the wrong direction, not because he chose it, but because he never chose otherwise. And a mind left without deliberate direction does not sit idle. It does not wait patiently for instruction. It reaches for whatever is most available, most familiar, most emotionally charged. And for a wounded man, what is most available is almost always the evidence of everything that has already gone wrong. So the mind feeds on that, quietly, consistently, and it grows stronger in that direction with every passing day now. Before you accept that as your permanent condition, I want you to understand something fundamental about how the mind actually operates, because once you see it clearly, the entire situation changes. Your mind is not your enemy. It is your instrument, and like any instrument, it does not determine the music. It plays what it is given. The mind is engineered, brilliantly, magnificently engineered, to move toward whatever occupies it most completely. This is not a poetic notion. It is observable, documented, and consistent across every human being who has ever lived. The mind amplifies its dominant input. It finds evidence for whatever it is consistently pointed toward. It organizes your perception, your energy, and your behavior around the central thought you feed it most. This means something extraordinary. It means that the man who floods his mind daily with images of inadequacy, rehearsals of past failure, and quiet assumptions of future defeat is not suffering from bad luck. He is suffering from bad programming. And programming, unlike luck, can be changed. The farmer understands this instinctively. He does not walk out to his field each morning and hope that something useful grew overnight by accident. He plants deliberately. He tends consistently. He protects the soil from the things that would choke out what he is trying to grow. And in due season the field returns exactly what was planted, not more, not less. Your mind is that field. Whatever you plant there with consistency and emotional conviction will grow. This is not selective. It does not grow only the pleasant seeds and reject the difficult ones. It grows what is planted. Which means the man who plants doubt will harvest doubt, and the man who plants possibility, deliberately, daily, without apology, will harvest something else entirely. This is where the work becomes practical, because changing the dominant thought is not a matter of willpower alone. It is a matter of replacement. You cannot simply remove a thought from a mind any more than you can remove darkness by arguing with it. You remove darkness by introducing light. You displace the unwanted thought by persistently introducing a stronger one, and then feeding that new thought with repetition, with attention, with the daily discipline of returning to it even when the old current tries to pull you back. It will try. Expect that. A mind with years of practice running in one direction does not instantly reverse course. But it does respond. Gradually, then unmistakably, it responds. And one morning, an ordinary morning, unremarkable in every other way, you will notice that the first thought you woke up with was different, quieter, steadier, pointed forward instead of backward. That morning is not the finish line. It is confirmation that the field is changing. Tend it from there. The mind will always serve something. The only question a man must answer, and answer daily, with his choices and his words and his deliberate attention, is whether he will be the one to decide what that something is. Feed it truth. Feed it purpose. Feed it the vision of the man you are committed to becoming. And watch what the harvest becomes. There is a story a man tells himself when he decides he is ready to change. It is a compelling story, a cinematic one. In it, there is a moment, a single crystalline moment where everything shifts, where the music swells, so to speak, and the man rises from whatever has been holding him down with a new fire in his eyes and a certainty in his step that nothing can touch. He makes one powerful decision, takes one defining action, and from that point forward, his life moves in an entirely new direction. He waits for that moment, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, and while he waits, nothing changes. I want to say something to that man tonight that I wish someone had said to me far earlier than I discovered it for myself, not to discourage him. Quite the opposite. What I want to say is this: the moment he is waiting for is not coming, not in the form he imagines, not in a single dramatic flash of transformation that rearranges everything at once. And the reason he needs to hear that is not to take something from him. It is to give him something far more valuable than a moment. It is to give him a method. Here is what I have observed in studying the lives of men who genuinely transformed themselves, not the ones who had one good week and then faded, but the ones who actually became different men and built different lives. Without exception, the change they experienced was not dramatic at its root. It was quiet. It was repetitive. It was, to an outside observer on any given Tuesday, almost entirely unremarkable. They got up at the same time. They said the same grounding words to themselves each morning. They made one small right decision, then another, then another. They did not wait for the conditions to be perfect. They did not wait until they felt strong enough, ready enough, healed enough. They simply did the next right thing with whatever they had available on that particular day, and then they did it again the following morning. That is the entire method, and it is far more powerful than it sounds, because here is what most men do not account for: the extraordinary mathematics of consistency. A small action, repeated daily, does not produce small results over time. It produces compounding results. The same way a single degree of temperature separates water that is almost boiling from water that is actually boiling, and those two states produce entirely different outcomes. The small daily disciplines of a rebuilding man separate a life that almost changed from a life that actually did. The words a man says to himself each morning are not decoration. They are not a warm-up routine before the real work begins. They are the real work, because they quietly recalibrate the instrument before the day begins. They remind the man, at the cellular level of belief, who he has decided to become. And a man who starts each day from that place of quiet, deliberate self-definition makes subtly different choices all day long. Slightly braver ones, slightly more forward-facing ones. And those slightly different choices, accumulated across weeks and months, produce a life that looks nothing like the one he was living before. This is not inspiration. This is architecture. The cathedral was not built in a day. It was not built in a single magnificent burst of creative energy. It was built stone by ordinary men, showing up in ordinary weather, doing their specific and unglamorous task with consistency and care. And when it was finished, when the last stone was placed and a man stepped back and looked at what had been built, the result was breathtaking. Not because of any single stone, but because of all of them together. You are building something like that right now. Or you could be. Starting tomorrow morning, not with grand gestures, not with a transformation so visible that the people around you immediately notice and applaud, but with the quiet, powerful, daily discipline of a man who has decided, in the only place decisions are ever truly made, that he is worth building. 7 sentences each morning, spoken with intention, returned to without fail. That is the stone, laid daily, without drama, and one day, not too far from now, you will step back and see what has been built. It will take your breath away. So here is what I am asking of you tonight, not someday, not when conditions improve, not when the timing feels right. Tonight, before you sleep, write these 7 sentences down, by hand, on paper. Then tomorrow morning, before the news, before the phone, Before the noise of the world gets its hands on your attention, read them out loud. Stand up when you do it. Use your voice. Mean every word. Do this for 30 days without missing a single morning, and I promise you this, you will not be the same man you are tonight. Not because the world will have changed, but because you will have changed in the only place that has ever truly mattered. Inside, the rebuilding has already begun. Good night and good growing.